Imagine you're a politician in medieval Prague. You've just delivered what you think is a pretty solid argument in a heated debate. But instead of a rebuttal, instead of a counter-argument, your opponents simply pick you up and hurl you out of a third-story window. Now imagine this happening not once, but multiple times across centuries in the same city, and that one of these window-tossing incidents literally sparked one of the deadliest wars in European history. A war that killed 8 million people. Because of a window. This is the insane, true story of the defenestrations of Prague. And I promise you, history does not get weirder than this. Before we dive in, let's talk about that word. Defenestration. It sounds like something a doctor would diagnose you with, but it actually comes from the Latin de, meaning down from, and fenestra, meaning window. So defenestration literally means the act of throwing someone out of a window. And the fact that there is an official word for this in multiple languages should tell you something about how often it happened in European history. But nowhere, and I mean nowhere, embraced this particular form of political expression quite like Prague. Prague, the capital of what is now the Czech Republic, sits in the heart of Bohemia, a region that for centuries was a boiling pot of religious tension, political power struggles, and fiercely independent people who really did not appreciate being told what to do. And when the people of Prague got angry, they didn't write strongly worded letters. They didn't stage walkouts. They opened a window and made their feelings very, very clear. The city experienced at least 3 major defenestrations, but 2 of them changed the course of European history forever. And it all starts with a priest, a wagon, and a very bad day for Prague's city council. Let's travel back to the year 1419. Europe is deep in the grip of religious turmoil. The Catholic Church dominates nearly every aspect of life. But in Bohemia, a reformist movement is gaining serious momentum. It's led by the followers of Jan Hus, a Czech priest and theologian who had dared to criticize the church's corruption, its sale of indulgences, and its hoarding of wealth. Jan Hus wanted services in the Czech language instead of Latin. He wanted ordinary people to receive communion in both bread and wine, not just bread, which was reserved for the laity, while the clergy kept the wine for themselves. For these radical ideas, the church burned Jan Hus at the stake in 1415. But killing him didn't kill his movement. It supercharged it. By 1419, his followers, known as the Hussites, were furious. King Wenceslaus IV of Bohemia, trying to keep the peace, had been replacing Hussite-friendly city officials with anti-Hussite Catholics. Tensions were volcanic. And on July 30th, 1419, a Hussite priest named Jan Želivský led a massive procession through the streets of Prague. They marched to the new town hall, demanding the release of imprisoned Hussites. The city council refused. Accounts differ on exactly what happened next. Some say a stone was thrown from the town hall window at the procession. Others say the crowd simply reached a breaking point. Either way, the mob stormed the building, grabbed the judge, the burgomaster, and several members of the town council and threw them out of the windows. They fell roughly 70 feet. Those who survived the fall were finished off by the crowd below. When King Wenceslaus heard the news, he was so shocked and enraged that he reportedly suffered a fatal episode. Whether it was a heart attack, a stroke, or an apoplectic fit, the king was dead within weeks, and his death created a power vacuum that exploded into the Hussite Wars, a brutal series of conflicts that raged across Central Europe for nearly 2 decades. Multiple crusades were launched against the Hussites. Entire cities were sacked, tens of thousands died, and it all traced back to that window in Prague's new town hall. The First Defenestration didn't just send politicians to their deaths, it sent all of Bohemia spiraling into war. Now fast forward almost exactly 200 years. It's 1618, and the religious tensions in Bohemia have not calmed down. Not even a little. After the Hussite Wars eventually wound down, Bohemia had been granted certain religious freedoms. Protestants, including the spiritual descendants of the Hussites, were allowed to worship relatively freely. This was formalized in a document called the Letter of Majesty, signed by Emperor Rudolf II in 1609. It was essentially a promise. Your religious freedom is protected. But promises in the 17th century were only as strong as the person making them. And when the devoutly Catholic Ferdinand of Styria maneuvered himself into position to become the King of Bohemia and eventually Holy Roman Emperor, everything changed. Ferdinand was not interested in tolerating Protestantism. He began rolling back religious freedoms. Protestant churches on royal lands were closed. Some were even demolished. The Letter of Majesty, as far as Ferdinand's regents were concerned, was becoming a dead letter. The Protestant Bohemian nobility was livid. They saw this as a direct violation of their guaranteed rights. So on May 23, 1618, a group of Protestant lords marched into Prague Castle to confront the Catholic regents who were governing on Ferdinand's behalf. They found 4 regents present. 2 of them, Vilém Slavata and Jaroslav Božita of Martinique, were known hardliners against Protestant rights. After a heated and furious exchange, the Protestant nobles put the 2 regents on trial right there in the room. The verdict was swift: guilty of violating Bohemian liberties. The sentence was even swifter. The Protestants grabbed Slavata and Martinique and threw them out of the 3rd-floor window of Prague Castle, a drop of roughly 70 feet. For good measure, they also threw out their secretary, Philip Fabricius, who just happened to be in the wrong room at the worst possible time. Now here's the incredible part: all 3 men survived. Catholics later claimed they were saved by the Virgin Mary, or perhaps by angels who caught them mid-fall. The Protestants had a less miraculous explanation. They said the men landed in a large pile of horse manure that had accumulated in the moat below. The truth likely involved a combination of the sloped castle wall, some lucky landings, and yes, possibly some very well-timed refuse. But regardless of how they survived, the damage was done. Not physical damage to the regents, political damage to all of Europe. The Second Defenestration of Prague was the match that lit the fuse of the 30 Years' War, one of the most devastating conflicts in human history. Here's how the dominoes fell. After throwing the regents out the window, the Bohemian Protestants knew there was no going back. They established a provisional government, raised an army, and formally deposed Ferdinand as King of Bohemia. In his place, they elected Frederick V, a Protestant prince known as the Elector Palatine. Ferdinand, now Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand II, was not about to let this slide. He called upon the Catholic League, the might of Spain, and the forces of the Bavarian Duke to crush the Bohemian rebellion. In November 1620, at the Battle of White Mountain just outside Prague, the Protestant Bohemian forces were utterly destroyed in less than 2 hours. Frederick, who would forever be mocked as the Winter King because his reign lasted barely 1 season, fled into exile. But the war didn't end there. It metastasized. What started as a Bohemian religious revolt drew in Denmark, then Sweden, then France. Catholic versus Protestant, Habsburg versus everyone. The conflict sprawled across the entire continent. Germany became the primary battlefield, and the devastation was apocalyptic. Some regions of Central Europe lost 1/3 of their population, others lost more than half. Cities were burned, farmland was destroyed, plague and famine followed the armies like shadows. By the time the Peace of Westphalia finally ended the war in 1648, an estimated 8 million people were dead. The political map of Europe was fundamentally redrawn. The concept of national sovereignty, as we understand it today, was essentially born from the ashes of this conflict. And it all started because some angry nobles threw 2 guys and an unlucky secretary out of a window in Prague. So why did Prague keep doing this? Why was throwing people out of windows such a recurring theme? Historians point to a few explanations. First, it was deeply symbolic. In a society where power was often exercised from above, literally from castle towers and town halls, throwing someone out of a high window was the ultimate reversal. It was stripping someone of their elevated status in the most visceral way possible. Second, it was public. Defenestration was a spectacle. It sent a message not just to the victim, but to everyone watching below. And third, there's a strong argument that the Second Defenestration was deliberately modeled on the first. The Protestant nobles in 1618 knew their history. They knew what the Hussites had done in 1419. By repeating the act, they were connecting their rebellion to a proud tradition of Bohemian resistance. They were saying, "We've done this before, and we'll do it again." There was even a third defenestration in 1948, though it's far more mysterious. Jan Masaryk, the foreign minister of Czechoslovakia and the last non-communist member of the government, was found dead beneath the bathroom window of the foreign ministry. The communist government ruled it a suicide, but most historians and forensic investigations since have concluded he was murdered, thrown from the window to silence democratic opposition. Even in the 20th century, the windows of Prague remain dangerous places to stand near. The defenestrations of Prague remind us that history doesn't always pivot on grand battles or sweeping ideological movements. Sometimes it pivots on a moment of rage, a broken promise, and an open window. The people of Bohemia had a way of making their anger unmistakable, and the consequences of those moments of fury echoed across centuries and continents. So the next time someone tells you that history is boring, tell them about the time Czech politicians invented the world's most dramatic form of political protest and accidentally started a war that killed 8 million people. History is absolutely wild. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the most absurd event in history that you think deserves its own video? I read every single comment, and your suggestions genuinely shape what we cover next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.